Hello again. As the 75th anniversary of the arrival of the Empire Windrush nears, we are already seeing a concerted effort to portray the event as a joyous one and something to be celebrated. We will in the next few months be hearing a great deal about the contribution to this country made by the so-called Windrush Generation. What precisely those contributions were remains obscure, but there's no doubt that we'll be hearing a lot about them between now and June, although with no specific examples, I fancy. For my own part, I am wholly unable to identify a single benefit which immigration from the Caribbean has bestowed upon Britain. We may be told about black nurses coming here and how some of them worked for the National Health Service, but I don't personally see that as a benefit. Quite the opposite, in fact. It signalled the beginning of a creeping acceptance on the part of hospitals as well as officials in government that rather than spending money training nurses in Britain, it might be easier and cheaper simply to poach them from other countries, usually underdeveloped nations. The fruit of this attitude may be seen in any hospital or health centre today in this country. It is a policy which is both immoral, in that we take doctors and nurses from the developing world, and also bad for Britain, because many of those brought here turn out not to be educated and trained to the same rigorous and high standards as those who attended medical schools or were trained as nurses in Britain. I can see benefits brought to Britain by Gujarati Hindus and Sikhs from the Punjab, of course. We see this every time we want to buy a loaf of bread after 5 o'clock, when British shops traditionally closed until the 1950s and 1960s. Hindus and Sikhs have had a great influence on Britain, and much of it good. Returning now to Caribbeans and the celebration of their culture and so on, means pretending or turning a blind eye to the fact that they do tend to be disproportionately involved in certain types of activity. One need only glance at a newspaper to see what I'm talking about here. To give one instance, shootings and stabbings all too often involve those of Caribbean heritage. Obviously, not all people of this ancestry are involved in such things, but the more Caribbean families in the district, the more one is likely to see such things. I can see the disadvantages to bringing large numbers of people from the islands of the Caribbean to Britain, but I am honestly unable to identify a single contribution made in general to this country by this particular form of immigration. I am, however, open to being persuaded about this, so perhaps those commenting here could help me by pointing out such things. To be perfectly clear, I gave an instance of how immigration by Hindus changed this country in a way that most of us would regard as being for the better. I am asking if anybody can cite a similar example relating to immigration from the Caribbean.